Hey, Chris. Welcome to another week of Cyber Talks. I was just on a couple webinars today, and I saw there were a bunch of comments about cybersecurity policy, business policies. So I figured we'd probably expand that a little bit here. It was even showing up in some of the insurance applications that people were showing me this week.
Yeah, I mean, nothing gets people out of bed more than policies.
Exactly.
I mean, come on, let's keep this exciting. Let's bring
Well, we can
actually.
talk about it. We can talk about a data breach, which ultimately you ultimately have to have an incident response policy. That's just another one in there. But if we back up and go all the way to the beginning, is like, don't the IT guys just know what to do?
I mean, you hope, but I think it comes back to something far before that. Where's the accountability in the organization? You,
You hear my dog? The dog's starting up again. Anyway,
you need a policy for Sadie and say, while I'm recording, you cannot make a peep.
How about a policy that says the landscaper can only come on a certain day too, because that's what she's barking at. That's what's got her all concerned.
That's okay. People love dogs. This will boost our ratings.
My beagle pictures get a lot of interaction, and
people like dogs.
Yesterday was socks snoring that got 100 views.
There you go.
So anyway, back to policies.
If you post a picture of either of us snoring, it's creepy. Anyway, I think it comes down to we have to talk about accountability inside of an organization. One of the best analogies I've ever worked with this is accountability is the game and policies are the rules of the game.
Okay.
So when we have a game, we need to hold people accountable. But what are the rules for that game? And the policies in our companies are going to be all the rules for playing that game. But there has to be accountability, responsibility for it, because what good is a policy if nobody's held accountable to it?
Right.
So,
and also, yes, it can be treated as a game, but there's so many new things happening that are requiring policies.
Yeah. Well, you talked about insurance. I mean, they want to see policies because they want to make sure that people are trying to, if we put it in the context of a game, make sure that they're playing the game right. So if they have critical information or data that they need to protect, they want to make sure that they have the proper policy and proper things in place to make sure that they're doing that. So
I think
I'm sure I could say that a lot better, but
back with the game attribute, make sure people are even playing the game, because a lot of, I talked to one person and said, "Oh yeah, we've got policies. Let me go find them." It's not like anyone at the company even knew they existed.
So, rule number one of policies is people need to be able to know where they are and what policies are applicable to them. So if you don't know where the policies are they really policies?
It's a Word doc.
It's fair, but if nobody knows where they are, I mean, what good is it?
At least in this case, it didn't say insert company name here.
Or the wrong company name.
Yeah. A couple years ago, I did see there was a HIPAA investigation, and they actually pulled the policy book off the shelf, and it said insert company here. But we had policies, we just didn't open the book.
All right. Let's make this really simple. Policies are specific to your organization. They should be custom to your organization, your business. They shouldn't just be downloaded templates off the internet that you put into a SharePoint library or something like that and say, "Hey, here's our policies," and then have, like you said, insert company name here. That's not a policy. That's just a collection of documents. But let's talk a little bit about who's the ultimate accountability in a company. I think that's a fair question to ask. Mm-hmm. So, and we deal with small businesses a lot, but even if you start going towards bigger businesses, who's ultimately accountable in the company? So, is it the business owner? If there's a board, it's going to be the board. Any kind of shareholder could technically, it depends on the organization of the company and things like that, the legal structure. But ultimately, if there's a board, they're the owner. If there's one single owner, they're the owner. All right. So who's gonna be responsible then to be the leader of that game? It's going to be executive management, which could be the owner, because the owner might be the CEO and executive management. They might not have anybody else,
Right.
or if there's an executive management team, they'd be the leader. But who designs the game? So we're talking about security policies and things inside of a business. Who's the actual designer? Do they have a leader inside the business that can actually help design the game and design the policies and present them to executive management or the board to get approval for them to go into place?
Well, a lot of times they might have a board meeting. If they have a board, they might kind of say, "Oh, we need policies," and then people are saying, "Oh," then they scramble to find something, which was the case in this other one that I was looking at. Because
but who helps them with the policies? Have they defined that?
They haven't. They're reaching out at the last minute. Oh, let's go to the IT guys and get it done. Well, the IT policies, there's a start, but it's not everything.
Policies and procedures go far beyond IT, though. There's HR,
Absolutely.
There's sales, there's marketing, there's business operations. Who's accountable and who's going to be responsible for that?
And if the company doesn't define who that is, it's going to fall on the owner.
Well, the owners are accountable regardless, but they may not be responsible for getting the policies done, but they're accountable for them. So when I talk to companies, even larger companies, they don't even think about this. Like HR, they might have an HR director who is making HR policies, and then they might take them to the executive team, or it might just go to the owner and say, "Hey, is this cool?" And they'll approve them. They may not talk to legal representation, which can be sticky, especially in employment law. But that's how it usually goes. They just look at an IT company, like if they hire an outsourced IT company, they just expect them to make policies, and that's not part of the actual relationship most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it has nothing to do with that.
Well, you bring up a good point that a lot of companies will work with an outside company to actually develop an employee handbook or a policy handbook because they need it, and they're not really not going into what the policies that we need around cybersecurity to run your business, and they're just not there.
But why do we need policies? It's all about accountability.
Absolutely.
That's where it comes down to. So, now that we've talked about that, one thing that people need to understand too is policies, compliance to that is mandatory. If you have a policy in your company, it's mandatory. Doesn't matter who it is. If you put a policy in place in your company, it's mandatory for everybody to follow that.
Okay.
How many companies have you dealt with where that's not the case?
I mean, you want MFA on everybody's account except for the owners because it's too much effort?
Yeah. That's not a policy. It's not mandatory. There should be standards and guidelines and procedures that go along with this, but following a policy is mandatory and then supported by those things. And we need requirements inside of a policy. So I think the biggest problem that we see, or at least that I see, is people's lack of understanding of why they need it and that it is a mandatory thing and that everybody must do it. And a policy doesn't get implemented overnight. You're gonna have like a draft of a policy. It has to be approved by the owner or the board or whatever structure you have in your business. And then it has to be adopted, and then it has to be held accountable. So you get to a point where it's like, if the team at the top is not going to look at it like that, are you having policies for the sake of having policies, or are you actually having policies for accountability? There's a big difference there. And I see the latter more than the former, where people just want to have policies, but they don't hold anybody accountable for them.
Sure. Because they can check the box.
Yeah, so they check a box, but it really doesn't change anything in the business. It doesn't help them manage their risk better. They don't review them. That's the other thing. Policies should be reviewed, changed. When the organization changes, they should be reviewed and changed. How many times has anybody ever asked you for a policy to be reviewed and changed, or should it be changed?
I like to review them once a year.
We do, but do they come to you and ask you to?
No. So.
All right. So you want to talk about a couple of policies that people probably should have, just in general?
We can do that.
Yeah. How about an acceptable use policy? Have a purpose.
Yeah. The acceptable use purpose of how and what you can use our technology for.
Yep.
The other one that I would throw out there is bring your own device policy. How does your IT team work with PCs that people have at their houses?
I take that stuff further. Yeah, I take that stuff further and probably do an asset management policy first, at least for internal assets. I think BYOD is important. It's definitely important. It's something you should have, but I'm not sure if it's one of the first ones. I guess you could kind of combine that, I guess, with the work from home policy if you do have work from home.
Yeah, my thing on the BYOD policy is if we get a bunch of people using their own equipment, we're going to put tools out there to really secure it. But does the employee understand that if there is a data breach, there's a real good chance that if there's an investigation, that everything on their home machine becomes part of that investigation.
Yeah, I think you need to talk about a policy in place of should bring your own device even be a thing. Like talk about it before that. Should if you're not doing like basic things, if you don't have like an acceptable use policy, you don't have an asset management policy, maybe change management, access control policy, an incident management policy. How do we respond to how do we report incidents? You're missing the mark a little bit. Obviously, BYD, I'm not discounting that. I think that's important, but I think there's other ones that just need to be brought in beforehand. Just make sure that people are doing things right. How do you classify your information? An information classification policy.
Do you classify your information?
That's a different story. I can tell you the resounding no for most people, and that's a big problem. Is there a network management policy in place? How are we establishing rules for maintenance expansion of the network? Security training and awareness policy. How are we making people aware of security threats? How are we training them in the company? How do we manage vulnerabilities? A vulnerability management policy. Really important things that are just missed. We could talk about physical security policy. I think work from home kind of goes with your BYOD, because I think they're two different policies, but I think they kind of work together sometimes, because if people are working from home, are you giving them a piece of hardware to work on as part of your policy, or are you allowing them to work in their home, like you said? And if you are, then what's your policy behind them using that?
And do they understand the implications? The employees understand the implications.
I don't know if the company understands the implications. I can't tell you how many companies come to us and they let people use personal devices with no policy, no controls, just free, hey, here you go. You could just put all of our data on your personal device. We don't care. And it's well, what happens if they quit or they leave?
So we had a client that basically went Chapter 11 and sold the company. And as part of the severance package to all the employees, they said, "I'll just take your computer with you when you go home tonight." Yep.
First of all, how did that go? How did that go with the purchaser?
It was in liquiidation, so it wasn't an actual purchase. It wasn't a sale.
Oh, it was liquidation. Oh. How critical? How sensitive the information was on these? Don't say what type of business. Just say sensitivity.
It was sensitive.
Okay.
There was definitely this company had to make FDA filings.
Oh.
So do I really know what was on everyone's computer? Nah. they had copies. There were copies all over, and we found out after the fact. Oh yeah, we gave everybody the PCs, and they're still using them.
Okay.
And so, guys,
Moving on.
I have no problem with people companies wanting to liquidate, give people their PCs as a severance package, but work with your IT team. Make sure that you purge all the data from those PCs before they go, because as of now, that data is still sitting out there, and if they try and sell it, somebody's got it.
The data management policy is kind of important. So let's end this on a really simple thing. You need to have accountability in your company. So with accountability comes policies, and those are just the rules for playing the game, for being a part of the company.
Yep.
They are mandatory. You cannot play a game without somebody running the game. So you have to make sure that the people at the top of this organization, throughout the entire organization, know the rules for the entire game that we're playing, and they follow them. There's no exceptions to those rules. When you make these are for everybody. And just understand that. And for good measure too, because honestly, if you're a CEO and you feel like you're above a policy, you're the biggest target. You're the biggest fish that somebody's going to go after. So you have access and have more control in that company than anybody else. So why wouldn't you want to play the game within the rules? So I'll tell you what, all the stuff that we do in our business, I follow the same rules as everybody else. So the things that we have in place, the policies that we have, I follow them just like everybody else. I
had a phone call today from the owner, retired owner of a law firm, and he reached out and said, "I keep getting this pop up." I was like, "Yeah, you're gonna have to use your MFA to get in." It's like, "Do I have to?" Yes. Okay. So he didn't push it to get for me not to do it, but yeah, definitely have policies, stick to them. And guys, if you're still with us, if you really want something better, comment below, give us a better topic for next week, because I came up with this topic and I made Chris go for it.
I mean, I'll talk about policy. I don't really care.
I know.
Depends on what we want our ratings to be. I think I'll be out of town next week, so this would be interesting.
Okay.
We'll schedule something, but
that's what you're going someplace warm next week.
Yeah, I'm escaping the fall. I'm going to where it's kind of summery. Yeah, drop a comment down below. Let us know what you want to hear about. We can talk about horror stories. We can talk about other things. Cybersecurity Awareness Month. This week's all about phishing. So if you want to talk a little fishy, we can talk about that. By the way, when you make phishing videos, it's like the worst thing in the world when you use AI to auto caption things, because it spells phishing. And when you say phishing in a video 7 times or 8 times, it just keeps auto correcting it to phishing. So, man, that mower is on top of you, isn't it?
And it's a leaf blower outside now.
Leaf blower? All right. Well, the chaos at Bob's house needs to end. So, everybody stay safe, and we'll talk to you next week.